I'm Doug. I'm the branch manager. Welcome to episode 9. Today we are up near Arrington, BC, just east of Arrington, and we're on the edge adjacent to English River Falls Provincial Park. I'd like to show how Mother Nature has a dark side and a good side. Unfortunately, there is a lot of, things in here that are more on the, say, dark side. This is called Douglas fir root rot. I'll give you the age of the tree is about 40 years old. So these trees were planted about 42 years ago because they're 2 years old when they're planted. Since then, the root rot, called Phalinus is the genus, Wearii is the family. That's the botanical name. So if you remember Phalinus, kind of an odd name. Phalinus wearii is the most devastating root rot in the whole northwestern Pacific United States and British Columbia on Douglas fir root rot. It is the number one cause of death in Douglas fir. Now I'm saying at 40 years old, this is an immature stand, so it's, if there was going to be any harvesting here, it would have to go about another 20 years before they did anything, or 10 years. What I showed you here was the root rot down the tree. I want to show you that this is what happens after the root rot gets into the roots. It breaks off at the collar. This is the collar of the roots. Below that would have been all the roots. Well, as you can see, it's broke right off at the collar, and that's the typical sign. That's the most consistent sign of what this root rot does. So I have here a Douglas fir, believe it or not, is only about 40 years old. It just happens to be on a very good microsite. It's perfect for Douglas fir. Now the crown itself is thinning, the branches are thinning, the crown is getting smaller. It's also getting a yellowish brown on the foliage itself. That's a sign that this tree is in the initial to middle stages of root rot, Phalinus, our friend Phalinus. Now, this is a high site for Douglas fir. Over here you see the sword fern, and back here, these sword ferns are prolific. They're very healthy. Sword fern is one indicator, just by looking at it on the size and everything, that this is a high site. It's like the site is growing, and this tree basically, as you can see, is growing over 2 feet a year, upwards of 3 feet a year. That's a lot. Okay, besides the crown, I just talked about those symptoms. This other symptom is very obscure, but I will point it out. We can see a little bit of this white and little blobs of white down here. That's the start of resinosis. So the tree is actually already suffering. If we were to cut into this tree, heartwood, which is the center part, and the sapwood is the perimeter of the tree, if you were to cut into it, the heartwood would be brown. So it would be starting to rot already. But we're obviously not going to cut into these trees. So this Douglas fir that we just took a look at the top and down at the bottom. Now down at the bottom is where you'll see the resinosis. This is a very clear sign, a very clear manifestation of resinosis. So as I show you here, put my hand down, some people call it sap, but what it is the tree is literally bleeding. It's like when we bleed. This tree is bleeding because it's suffering. It's more advanced than the last tree I showed you. Not much, but it's also only it's less than 20 feet from the last tree. So this particular disease travels through the roots, and that's why it's so obscure. And that's why you can't tell that it's there unless you actually see an area like this. This foci is a foci of infection in the forest. So the foci of infection, very good term in silviculture, of course used everywhere in medicine, basically in humans and etc. In this particular area is about 20 meters wide and 30 meters long. So I marked this out because this is the prime concentrated area of the root rot right here. So I counted and marked 9 trees down and out, and I counted about 7 trees standing that are in the incipient to moderate stages of decay, and hardly that noticeable. The trees aren't going to cry out in pain because they just accept what's happening, and that's the way it goes. So I ribboned off the perimeter of this foci, and I told you the size I thought it was. Now beyond this, when I'm looking here on this side, the trees are getting more healthy. That means that the root rot hasn't quite got into them yet. It still has devastated this area in front of me, which is still over half a hectare. It happens as a pocket. So the root rot actually pockets itself in a little area like this, and then it'll stay in the ground, in the roots. It won't go very far, but it might slowly get into the healthy trees. However, usually it has a fixed size, fixed location, and you may not see another one of these until you're, say, a kilometer away walking through the same plantation. So that's the good thing. It doesn't go like a wildfire. It doesn't run through and just kill everything. It had just pockets. So that's a good thing. That's the bright side. And so another thing on the bright side is Mother Nature does do wonderful things. One thing that we have to mention is the fact that when a tree starts to die, it produces a distressed cone crop. So we can't see any particular distress cone crops up here because the canopies are quite high, but I'm sure we would find some. What that does mean is that the cones produce regular cones even though the tree is under distress. It's got a disease, it's starting to die, could be over a period of years. The cones will open up at one point in the fall and throw seeds. Some of those seeds may actually fill in this area that's open. So we don't like to have openings in the stand like this. And as you can see, as we just showed you, this area with the trees down and the root rot is obviously quite open, and it's open to stand. Now, the other thing that can be done here is I could come in and I could reforest the area with young seedlings. Of course, young seedlings are only 2 to 3 years old, and they're not very big, so that ends up being the next generation. The thing about Phalaenus is, though, that Phalaenus wearii stays in the ground, in the root systems, for decades. So when the next stand comes up, if we plant this area, even if it's small, or any others that we see further down, the root rot will be there, and at one point it could start to hit some of those new trees that we planted. And here's an example of one of the trees in here that's gone down. It got saved possibly by a hardwood that was in here. It means it didn't actually hit the ground, but it's going down to the ground. Again, this tree is only about 40 to 42 years old. It's broken off at the root collar. Can't see that's on the other side. You can see the roots sticking up. Basically, it just happens. It's an occurrence that happens quickly. Could be a wind. The rooting system's gone. It has nothing to hold it. Douglas fir has a taproot, which is unlike a lot of other conifers. So taproot makes it more anchored to the ground. So by breaking off of the collar, that's above the taproot. So there's nothing holding a tree, and down it goes. I hope you enjoyed our exploration of the lighter and darker side of Mother Nature. This is the branch manager signing off, reminding you to keep it real and keep it green. And as we have just showed,
Try that again.
so I hope you all enjoyed our show showing the lighter and dark side. And so we showed,
Nope.
so I hope you all enjoyed this exploration of the dark side and the light side, lighter side.